We've got a little bit of a treat in store for you today. We've got two very special guests, one of whom I'm sure you'll be a little bit more familiar with. It's our very own James Allison, and alongside him, a true Olympic great, a sailing icon. He medalled at 5 consecutive Olympics in a row. So Ben Ainslie, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Well, I got into the sport through my parents, Roddy and Sue, and they were very keen amateur sailors. Actually, they were from the north of England, around just south of Manchester, and they used to go to North Wales at the weekend sailing, and used to go off on these little boats called folk boats, which are like 25-foot clinker-built classic boats, and no idea what they're doing, and they'd sort of sail across the Irish Sea to Dunleary or somewhere like that for a few beers and come back the next day. But I was very fortunate. I was about 8 years old. My family moved to Cornwall, and that was just, as you can imagine, a dream for a young kid kind of into sailing to grow up down there and have so much access to the water. And so yeah, it really grew from there. I think one of the great things about sailing, and why all of us that are into it love it so much, is that it's such a diverse sport. There are so many different challenges and types of boats that you can sail, and different types of racing, inshore, offshore, match racing, fleet racing. There's always a different challenge, and that's what's great about it.
I know I wound up in Formula 1 because I had an engineering degree and I was a massive F1 fan. And I sort of thought that the engineering in F1 would be a lot more fun, and was lucky enough to fall into a job in the early 90s in an F1 team, and have never had a proper job since. So I've just worked in F1 and have loved every single year of it.
Well, I'm not joking. I always dreamed as a kid that I wanted to be a Formula 1 driver. But I clearly didn't make it.
Play into the crowd.
No, honestly, dead set. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I'm a massive Formula 1 fan. Yeah, I try and watch every race, and if I don't watch it, I record it and watch it back. And probably saying too much here, but embarrassing myself. But no, I really, really love the sport, and because it has so many similarities to what we do. Yeah, I guess that's most boyhood dreams, is to be a Formula 1 driver. But I never really did any karting, and got into sailing and enjoyed that, and that ended up being the pathway.
Absolutely. James, any other kind of alternative route?
Well, I imagined I'd be a fighter pilot, just because I'm very unimaginative, and that's what my dad was. But I'm colourblind, and so couldn't do that, and stumbled into engineering, and to be honest, I think had a much happier and more varied and more challenging life as a result. So quite lucky to have been colourblind.
We were, I guess, through the sailing team, we were probably the first sports property that Jim and INEOS got involved with. But very soon after that involvement, I think Jim met Toto, or they were introduced somehow, and then started talking about potentially getting involved in Formula 1, which is really exciting from our perspective, because most of the guys in the sailing team, if not all of them, are sort of Formula 1 fans. And so that sort of development through to the relationship with Mercedes was a big moment. The atmosphere here at Mercedes, considering what the team has achieved in Formula 1 and how humble and driven everybody is, it's really, really refreshing to see that. And like I say, we'll have a massive impact on our team. The America's Cup is very similar to Formula 1. It's a technology race. It's about developing the IP, the skills, the know-how to design and build the fastest boat, and then obviously sail it in the required manner to be successful. You've got to have the fastest boat. It's no sort of coincidence that generally it tends to be the best driver and the fastest boat, or the fastest car, that wins it. In your sport, Lewis is undoubtedly the best driver of his generation, and married up with the best car, and the results speak for themselves. As sailors, we've got to feed back, just as the drivers do in F1, we've got to feed back to the designers and help them in the development phase. So it's not just that we rock up and expect the fastest boat, and if we don't get it, it's the designer's fault. We very much take just as much responsibility as a sailing team to make sure that we're giving that feedback and we're also sailing the boat to its optimum. So it's a big challenge for everyone.
We had a small involvement in the last campaign, the 36th America's Cup, where we just put together a team of engineers who went and tried to muck in and help with the last campaign. And that exposure was enough for us to see that it was exciting, that it was difficult. I mean, our own sport, Formula One, is really hard, famously difficult to get all the ducks lined up, making sure that every part of the chain is strong, because you'll be broken by any weak link at any point in the chain. Our exposure last time round was enough for us to see that there's a massive parallel there. It's difficult, and you have to get every part of it in good shape in order to be able to have a competitive boat.
It was, like you say, it was a big year, and trying to put on an event like that for a global pandemic, and certainly we were very fortunate to be down in New Zealand. I don't think there was really anywhere else in the world that could have hosted that event at that time. But it was a tough challenge for the team, because we had a number of issues with our second boat, our eventual race boat. It was pretty apparent as soon as we put it in the water and started tuning up against the other teams. And it was, I think it was probably the toughest experience I'd ever had in sport in terms of our goal of winning the Cup. A long way to go, a lot of lessons to learn from that, and therefore really important to try and take those on board and make the necessary changes to get ourselves where we want to be, which is competing, getting into the finals, competing and ultimately beating the Kiwis.
The distance between your opportunity for redemption is much, much bigger. So at the end of the campaign, I know just because Ben explained to me that the team reviewed where they had got to, what was good, what was bad, and made a load of conclusions from it. We did the same at the point where we were forming the team for this time round. We made some decisions about how we'll try to approach certain things differently, how we'll try to keep some of the strengths, because there's a lot more strength than there was error. If you speak to anyone who has done these campaigns, all of them within a very short while will tell you the same thing, and that is that America's Cup is as much as anything else a competition with time, because it is a lot of work to do to get a boat of that complexity conceived, designed, made, tested and competitive ahead of a race, and you're up against it time-wise right from the start. Our work is properly cut out to make sure that we can get through the design iterations with sufficient liveness to make sure that we have been over and over those things and these things and that enough times that we have hauled back the performance deficit that was demonstrated at the last competition and put something that is going to be fast enough to win. And our biggest enemy there is time. This boat has an awful lot of aerodynamics on it and a lot of fluid dynamics on it. This stuff is we're not terrible at that. And with a bit of luck, some of our specialism there will really help. So up against it, against the clock right from the start, even though it's years away. But we've got a good, strong team of people. If we can get these two different worlds, MGP racing car folk and sailing folk, to find a very happy way of working together, then it's going to be a great ride.
Sport at the highest level, it's never going to be easy, and you've just got to try and stick to your guns. That goal is still the same, to win the Cup, and it's a learning process and a development process. It takes 2 or 3 campaigns to be able to come in and develop the IP, the skill sets, the team to to get the job done.
And if you can play a part in, as Ben says, winning for this country, the only major sporting thing that this country has never won, my goodness, that's an achievement.
With our relationship with the Kiwis, we've announced that we will have a Youth Cup and a Women's America's Cup in this next cycle to be raced in this AC40 class of boat, which will be a new class of boat designed by the Defender, which will not only host the Youth Cup and the Women's Cup, but also the preliminary regattas that we'll have in the build-up to the next Cup. That's a great initiative. So a lot of progression actually within the sport, where we can never really do enough in terms of inspiring the next generation of sailors and getting that diversity right. And it's an ongoing project, but some really good initiatives in more recent times.